Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom with Kate Olson. As an evolving spirit and change adventure navigator, it is Kate's mission to empower and guide you on your path and inspire your truest passions. She will encourage you to share your gifts, speak your truth, and ignite your inner wisdom and purpose. She hopes to do so with a little humor and grace, and her own soulfire passion. Kate talks with amazing guests who have embraced the pursuit and are fanning the flames of their own passion, purpose, and soulfire wisdom. Now here's your host, Kate.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom and Tips, Tricks, and Triumphs Tuesday. So if this is your first time listening, I'm a hypnotherapist, NLP practitioner, Reiki master, and a life coach. But I like to call myself a change adventure navigator because I love guiding clients through obstacles and adversity to find their path, purpose, and peace. So today I have some tips on how to reduce stress because for some reason this has been a week where a lot of people have been expressing a lot of stress. So I think it's always good to give some reminders on how to reduce or lower that. But one thing is, number one tip is realize that stress is natural. And you're never going to completely eliminate it from your life. And you probably wouldn't want to if you could, because there is a good purpose to stress. So talk about your problems or write them down. Don't hold them all inside. Prioritize your to-do list. Don't have so many things to do that you're just in a constant state of overwhelm. Number 4, focus on what's important in this moment. And that is, as has been talked about a lot, one of the ways of mindfulness. So have options. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket, so to speak. Take time out for yourself. Self-care in whatever ways you do it is really important to reducing stress. Keep things in perspective. Sometimes we have a tendency to do what I call catastrophizing. That is making things bigger than they actually are. So be sure to, keep things in perspective. And then breathe. If you feel yourself getting stressed, just take a few minutes out, take a deep breath, and do that several times. Make sure that you're moving. Any type of exercise, movement, walking is going to be good for reducing stress. And then number 10, have some kind of a stress reduction ritual, like a meditation, yoga, Reiki, Tai Chi, Qigong. All of those are going to help in stress reduction. So those are my 10 tips for today, and I hope you're relaxing. So we have a great show planned for today. My guest is Carole Freeman, also known as Keto Carole. Carole is the Miss Fix-It of the Ketogenic Nutrition World. By day, Carole is a board-certified ketogenic nutrition specialist and a certified clinical hypnotherapist, helping women follow keto to long-term weight loss. Carole is a graduate of Bastyr University in Kenmore, Washington, with a dual Master's of Science degree in nutrition and clinical health, and psychology, and a Bachelors of Science in nutrition. She hosts her own podcast, Keto Chat Live, and by night, Carole is a stand-up comedian helping to create laughter for all. So I'm really excited to introduce Carole. I was pleasantly surprised to find out that she had moved from the Northwest to Arizona just a little before I did. So, hi, Carole.
Hi, Kate. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad
I have a guest tail with me. This is one of my 17-year-old kitties that's sitting on my lap. We'll see how long. So for those of you watching, if you can see a tail, it's not mine.
Yeah, we've had a few other pets. I don't know why, but they seem to get bored quickly.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what led you to your current path?
Oh my gosh, it seems like a meandering journey, but when I look back, every little piece of all of that meandering makes sense to put me where I am right now. And I feel like what felt like a misstep in all my life before it was actually necessary to get me to the place I am. I grew up in Oregon and moved to Seattle, lived there for 27 years, went to Bastyr, like you'd said, pursued my dream careers in nutrition and psychology. And forever, I'd always wanted to solve the puzzle of how do I help, especially women, be able to be mentally, physically, and spiritually as healthy as possible. And that included how do they create sustainable weight loss. And I spent 5 years at Bastyr. I got 2 degrees and certifications and racked up over $100,000 in student debt in trying to pursue and figure this all out. And I came out of school and I still was really struggling at what is this whole picture? Like there's something missing. How do I help people actually achieve these goals? And everybody was searching for it. And it actually, it took a horrendous car accident in 2014 where I was rear-ended by a distracted driver. She hit me about 35 miles an hour and I was disabled, progressively more and more disabled over the next year and a half. Traumatic brain injury. I had crush injuries to my legs. And just trying to, I went to 172 different clinical visits and trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And out of sheer desperation and my own, here, she's getting bored now, so she's going to sit behind me. Sheer desperation of just trying to solve. And I just really, really believe that if we feed our bodies correctly, it can heal itself. And so I just, after the medical system led me nowhere, I turned to my own belief of, well, what do I know nutrition-wise that could help me heal my brain? That was what I felt like was the core of what was going on. And I remembered about this much information about a ketogenic diet for treating epilepsy when I went through grad school. And I reasoned that, well, what I had going on was something major dysfunction in my brain, and perhaps a ketogenic diet may help that. And, short version of it is that it didn't take but just a few days for every symptom I had that had me disabled to just seemingly disappear overnight and move me into a phase of the best health I'd ever felt. And, while I trained at the best school in nutrition, there's a lot of pieces that are missing out there as far as like optimal health. And while I was following all that, I developed metabolic syndrome. I was headed toward diabetes. My whole family has a history of Alzheimer's and dementia. And while I was eating as healthy as I knew before that car accident, it really took that car accident for me to find the power of a ketogenic diet, and more specifically, just finding an individual person's carb tolerance and eating what's perfect for their body. And there is a lot of variation in that. So that completely transformed my health and my whole practice. And so now for over 6 years, 100% of what I do in my nutrition practice is helping women, especially middle-aged women that have been struggling with dieting their entire life. How do they follow this when we integrate all the psychological things that I've ever studied about getting rid of cravings, regulating appetite in a natural way, and then long-term behavior change I weave all of that into my keto approach. And so it makes for a very, very effective approach for women that are trying to solve this. How do I lose weight, keep it off, and feel really good and happy and healthy? So the stand-up comedy piece came about 3 years ago. Very short, abbreviated, family-friendly version of that is that I was dating somebody that dumped me by a text message while I was in the hospital. And I just thought, up to that point, I thought my whole life is great. And I finally found the man of my dreams. And it turns out that he wasn't the man of my dreams. He broke my heart. And my sister actually was one that said, maybe you should just go make fun of this on stage somewhere. Maybe you should tell jokes about this. And I was like, I'd always wanted to do that. And that was the little catalyst that gave me the fire and the drive to finally go get going with that. And once I did, I got really hooked on that. So that's my nighttime gig that I'm working on at the same time.
So going back to your weight loss program, what is unique about your approach? I mean, there's a lot of people out there touting this same diet. So what's unique about what you do?
Yeah. Thanks for asking, Kate. It's so true. There are so many people out there that hang up their coaching shingle, and there's quite a few things that are really different about what I do. For one, I am a credentialed healthcare provider. So I am a certified nutritionist in Washington State. I'm a board certified keto nutrition specialist nationwide. I also have the certification in clinical hypnotherapy, very, very well trained. And so I bring that piece to it, but also the whole psychological side of this as well is very unique. Even when I was in school getting those 2 degrees simultaneously, they still thought those are 2 separate parts of the body. Like what you eat is different from what your brain does. And really, nutrition impacts your brain and your brain impacts what you eat. So they're inseparable. And so I'm the only person that I know that has, advanced degrees in both of those, and that I've studied both for probably 20 years. And not only just like regular psychology of like, why do we do what we do? But I also really nerd out on the neurochemistry of appetite and obesity. And, what is it about foods that drive us to eat them and crave them and overeat them? And how do we use that knowledge and things I've figured out along the way that help people bypass those things so that, instead of just fighting and white knuckling over cravings and things like that, it's various tips and education and tricks that I bring to my clients that really help them overcome a lot of those most common obstacles. So you'll hear a lot of the myths out there about, well, keto's great, but it's too hard to stick to. And well, the truth is that any dietary change besides just eating anything you want anytime is hard to stick to. Low calorie dieting, that's hard to stick to forever. Like any dietary approach you pick is hard to stick to unless you have the right support, the right information, and, somebody watching over your health. So I'm always working very hard. I'm continually studying everything, and I'm always bringing the best that I can to my clients so that they have that full comprehensive picture, every single thing that they need to succeed, from the right information, an easy step-by-step approach to follow, an expert like me that's got a lot of experience in helping a variety of people, as well as then all those different aspects of the psychology and neurochemistry of it that make it work. So I guess the short answer is it's very complex what I do, but also I bring it to my clients in a way that's very simple for them to implement and in a way that's very effective.
So the most common thing I've heard about the keto diet is that it's a fad. Is it realistically a sustainable lifestyle?
I get those questions all the time, and that's so true. That's what the critics of it. Another one of the arguments I'll say is like, oh, this is just a fad. It's the current trend. Like it's not going to last. Nobody's going to be able to stick with this. Fad diets are terrible for your health. But the truth is, it's not actually a fad. The current name of it is the current marketed name of it. But low carbohydrate diets are actually the oldest weight loss protocol that there is. After I graduated Bastyr, but before I found a keto approach, I used to teach nutrition classes at a school in Portland, and I would teach the history of weight loss and dietary approaches. And we go back to the 1800s. So prior to then, the problem with nutrition is that people couldn't get enough to eat. And then we got to a point where we were able to feed most of our population. And then we turned the corner into, okay, people are eating too much. And the very first diet approaches were actually a low carb diet. They didn't know then what it was. They just called it banting. And the very first diet book, which is a pamphlet that came out back then, was by William Banting. And he, had this diet where basically you cut out all starchy foods. So you cut out bread, rice, and potatoes and sugars and focus on, meat, cheese, and a little bit of veggies. And that was, up until the 70s, that was every housewife knew the way you lost weight was you just cut back on starches and carbs. That was just well known. It wasn't controversial. It was known to be the most effective way to lose weight. And nobody argued then that well, I know it works, but you can't stick with it. Well, nobody argued with it then. It had a bunch of different names, right? So it was Banting was back in the 1800s. And actually, if we go down to South Africa, they don't call it keto down there. They still call it a Banting diet. And so it's only in the US where people don't understand the history of it that they think it's this current trend just because the name is different than what it's been before. And, through the 60s, 70s, and even up into the 2000s, it was called the Atkins diet, which people will kind of argue about oh, this is very different. Its roots are there. I mean, with keto now, we know a lot more of the science and we can measure ketones in the blood and things like that. But it's essentially the backbone, the structure of it is exactly the same mechanism that we've used for, hundreds and hundreds of years now. So it's a great myth that's out there. And it's probably going to stick around forever.
So what about your podcast? What is that about? And where do you want to go with it?
Yeah, Keto Chat Live is our new podcast. So I started, my co-host is Simon Kaufman. He's actually a Seattle-based comedian. And he, for the last couple of years, he would always call me on the phone and kind of, want free information. We're really good friends. So he would always call and hey, I'm trying to figure out this keto thing. How do I do it? So I've been just kind of on the side, coaching him, trying to teach him. Frankly, it was kind of annoying though, because my clients go through a full 9-week course and I, lots of hours of coaching and education that I'm giving them. And so here he was every couple of weeks or once a month, he'd call me and want me to tell him everything I knew about it. And it's dude, it's a lot harder than that just to stick with this. And so part of my asking him to come on as my co-host was this way I can teach him everything he needs to know, but also we have a lot of good chemistry. He's really funny. And so I can teach things that maybe sometimes aren't the most fun to hear, but then with his little witty interjections and questions and comments and things like that, it makes it really entertaining and really fun. So, I don't know when your processing comes out, but we've been running it live streamed for the last 4 months. And we're actually in the process right now. It's going to be launching July 1st. 2021 is when it's going to be launched as an actual podcast where you can listen to on all the podcast platforms. So very excited about that. And so it's a unique podcast in that, it's bringing something fun and entertaining and some lightheartedness to education in the keto space. So, we're trying to appeal to people that want to learn and be entertained at the same time. And eventually the vision I have for it is to actually have it as a live show that people can go attend. And they would go buy tickets for it, be a live event where we broadcast live, and then people could actually ask questions live in the audience as well too. So making it an event that's fun, and also people can get some more personalized attention with questions that they've got about it.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. So what's an example of one of your favorite client transformations that you've had?
Oh gosh, there's so many of them because we've got, when I first started this, I started it for my brain injury, and then it was oh, this is really effective way of getting weight off. And over the years of doing this, there's so many stories of just the long list of health things that get better for people is amazing. And weight loss is fun part for people. But for me, the whole picture of health that people get. They're able to reverse their diabetes and get off medication and high blood pressure medication, heartburn medication. Those, my client just a couple days ago has been able to lower her thyroid medication 3 different doses within just a 2-month period. Things that everyone else says, like, oh, these are just chronic illnesses. There's nothing you can do to prevent them. They're just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And so much of what people struggle with today, just reverse and get better and go away. And I remember one lady, Judy, that was working with me, that she came to me because she wanted to lose weight. She was in her mid 60s, and and like all my clients, had tried every diet under the sun. She also had a really rare genetic skin condition that called Haley's. Never heard of it before I'd worked with her. And it causes, like, a lot of her family has it, and had these like patches on her skin that were scaly and extremely itchy and painful. And so much so that it was disabling to her that she'd had to retire from work because she couldn't, the pain and itching were so bad. So she got, and it seems like every client I work with, there's some surprise. It's like, oh, and that got better too. And so for her, she lost the weight, and then she started working with me. So my clients that want to, part of the picture of, or part of the recipe for long-term success is being able to stay connected to the community of people that are following keto for long term. So people that work with me that want to stay on and volunteer to mentor other people through the program, they get a lot of benefit out of that because it helps them stay on track too. So she was working in that capacity with me, and she was loving her work. But one day I got an email from her, and she's like, I have some really bad news. And I'm like, oh no, what? She says, my Haley's is completely cleared up. And this is something genetically that, like, so many people in her family have. Everyone just thought it was their fate. There was nothing they could do about it. But she says, it's completely cleared up. And I'm kind of getting bored out of my mind sitting at home now, and I'm going to go back to work. I feel so great and so free, and I've loved working with you, but I'm so sorry I have to resign as one of your peer mentors because I've got my life back, basically. So, that's one story. Another lady, she came to me because she also wanted to lose weight. That's usually the front thing they're coming for. She'd been in a car accident 10 years prior that was way worse than mine. She'd, taken 3 months to learn how to re-walk again. She had pins and screws from her hips to her toes. Prior to working with me, every night she would lay on the couch. She was taking prescription painkillers. She had to ice her legs every single night just to get through the pain, 10 years after her car accident. And after about 6 weeks of working together, just, again, teach her how to do keto for weight loss is the primary thing. But I always know, like, there's going to be so many surprises that get better too. And she reported after 6 weeks, she says, I don't need painkillers anymore. I no longer ice my legs at night. I'm pain-free. And also, it's been so amazing because my daughter's car broke down the other day. And I'm like, how is this amazing? She says, I helped her push the car for a whole mile, and I wasn't even sore afterwards, like no pain at all. And so that's another one. I mean, there's so many countless stories of things that have gotten better, that all these mysterious things that people have, common things, mysterious things, and they just all seem to, the body just gets to return and be healthy and be the way that it should. So, yeah.
So what is the biggest challenge that you encounter working with clients?
Oh, the biggest challenge working with clients, I would say it. Okay. Good question. I had to really think about that one. I for some of them, it's getting them to understand that for long-term success, they have to stay involved with some kind of support for the long term. Again, that myth that people say, like, it's really hard to stick with keto long term. And again, it's hard to stick with any major dietary change. It's, we live in a world where food is abundant for most people. We live in a society where there's highly palatable, meaning foods that are designed to make us crave them and overeat them on every corner in everybody's house. And unless you make some kind of major change to what you're eating, you can't lose weight and keep it off. So we've been conditioned in the dieting world that you just do this temporary diet, you lose the weight, and then you transition back to maintenance, which means the fantasy is that you can just go back to eating whatever you want and you'll keep the weight off. And it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. If eating the way you ate before helped you keep the weight off, you would already be lean and thin and healthy. It doesn't thing. So they've been sold lies. Everybody out there has been sold lies about what dieting is. It's just this temporary thing that you have to struggle through, and you have to be miserable through it. And then don't worry, because you get to eat all the food you want again later on. So there has to be some acceptance and realization that it does take permanent long-term change. And so finding the change that you're willing to make and that you're willing to stick with. And so not only accepting that you have to change your food long-term, but you also have to get, the motivation, accountability, education, just that support that's necessary in order to stick with it because of the food environment that we just live in. And so it's kind of like, one of the fun analogies is like if you're trying to get sober off of heroin had ruined your life. You're trying to stay clean and sober off of it, but everywhere in the world and every corner there's drive-thrus that sell it. It's going to take a lot of work to stay sober off of it. So it is that kind of commitment. And some people have the fantasy still that like, well, no, I've got it. And when I lose the weight, that'll motivate me to keep it off. But the truth is there's the way that the brain works, the biochemistry of it, it wants to regain the weight. It wants to eat as much as possible. And so it's not about your motivation. It's about the physiology and just neurochemistry, the way the brain works, not on the conscious level. So that can be a really one of the biggest challenges is helping people know that we got to be in this together and we've got to stick with this for the long term. And it does require long-term support in order to get the success that you want long-term.
Very true. So, what is the biggest reward that you personally get from the work that you do?
I think it's just being witnessed to and being a part of the journey and transformation that my clients receive. They, this is something that most of them for decades and some of them for all of their lives. Like I have a lot of clients that have these stories of, I remember going on my first diet when I was 6 or 7 years old. My mom meant well, but she took me to a Weight Watchers meeting or something like that, and this is something that's made them miserable. They struggled with every day they wake up, just unhappy and loathing themselves and feeling like they've failed somehow. That's their fault. And it's not their fault. They've been sold a bill of lies. Well, that's the wrong phrase, but they've, sold lies about what it takes. They've tried everything. They're also told that, well, you're just weak-willed. Why don't you just push the fork away or stop? Why don't you try harder? I got to tell you, the ladies I'm working with are the hardest working, most tenacious. They're the smartest people on this planet. And the fact that they've tried 1,000 diets that have been miserable and they felt terrible, and they're contemplating one more because they really want to feel good. That's strength and tenacity, right? They're trying to solve this problem, trying to figure it out. And so being part of their journey, that within so my initial program that I have them go through is about 9 weeks. And that's all that it takes for them to take this huge shift. A lot of them for the first time of feeling free from cravings, no longer addicted to sugar, mental clarity, calm and peace. And they just have a really big mental shift there. That's like, I think I've got a glimpse that this can be my answer finally, often for the first time in their lives. And so, they're starting to see a lot of physical change, physiological change. We can see changes, improvements in their labs. But the biggest, I think the reward of this is just that positivity, optimism that they get to walk into and experience, as for a battle that they've been fighting for, decades or maybe their whole life. So yeah, that was a great question. I hadn't really thought about that so much, but that's, just seeing the health transformations and psychological transformations of my clients are really, that's extremely rewarding for me.
So you talked about how you got started in the comedy with your the somewhat funny breakup with the boyfriend. But what made you, other than your sister's suggestion, decide to do stand-up comedy? I mean, I've had funny things happen, and it didn't, the idea of doing stand-up comedy didn't.
Yes, you're right. There's a part of the story missing there. I grew up in a household where, our family didn't talk about politics or religion or anything of substance. We just were always laughing and watching Eddie Murphy and Steve Martin and Robin Williams, everything. We would go camping and listen to their tape recordings. Back before CDs, it was tape recordings of all that. And so that was just the love language of my family, was being funny, telling jokes and telling funny stories. And so growing up, I'd always had fascination with it. And I just thought that sometime in my adulthood, sometime I would just go and do stand-up comedy for fun. Like sometimes people decide to take dance lessons or improv classes. I just felt like someday I'll try it. And, but it was always like, I'm working on getting my career started. I've got these other things. I don't have time to do that or try that right now. And the truth is that actually while I was at Bastyr, so 10 years before I actually even really started comedy, I didn't, they had a talent show at school at Bastyr. And so the first time I did stand-up comedy, I did 5 minutes on the stage in front of 300 people in my school, and it went really, really well, but I didn't know that was just like a fluke. And then 10 years later was when I actually really got started with it. So it's always been something I wanted to try, and I just watched and enjoyed and just always been a huge fan of stand-up comedy. So it just seemed that was the missing part of like, why did your sister tell you to go do that?
Okay. So far you like doing the comedy, I assume, since you've been doing it for 3 years. What do you actually like about it?
Oh, there's nothing like, for me personally. So I know, because a lot of people will be like, I don't know how you could ever stand on that stage. It's terrifying. And for me, I just standing on a stage and I get to make those people laugh. Like I'm responsible for their joy and happiness and the breakthrough in their life. Now that I'm saying this, I realize like kind of the parallel of the joy of what my day work does for me, but it's a high and an adrenaline and just a rush of happiness and endorphins like nothing else. And it's extremely hard to do. And it's the one thing in my life that, everything else I've done is just like after 6 months, besides doing this keto thing, everything else I've done is I try something for 6 months and I'm like, okay, I'm bored with that. Right. This is the only thing where 3 years in, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so much to learn and this is so hard. And the study of it as well and figuring it out and how to get better. It's so hard to do it and learn how to do it properly. It takes a lot of work and effort to study it, practice, write, refine, go practice on stage. And the reward really is, on stage with that microphone. And I'm the only one there. And I'm the one who's it's my job and I'm in control of their laughs. And, trying to figure out how to get the most laughs for them it's a high and endorphins like nothing I've ever experienced.
Well, I understand the feeling, definitely. Just getting up on the stage is hard enough for me. So actually making people laugh also, I can't comprehend, but people who make me laugh are some of my favorite people. So, you moved from the Seattle area to the Phoenix area. Is there a difference in the comedy scene between Seattle and Phoenix that you've noticed?
There's a really big difference on the comic side. There is a subtle difference on the audience member side. So Phoenix is a much bigger metropolitan area than Seattle. I don't know what the numbers are, but it's like at least 50% bigger than what Seattle is. So Phoenix has a lot more what we call A-list clubs. So people that would know, a big name comedian that's been on Netflix, if them at a comedy club, getting that type of level of comedian at a comedy club is considered an A-list club. And we've got like 3 of those around the Phoenix area. And Seattle has like 1 in the area now. So that's one big difference, is that there's a lot more opportunity to see really big comedy names. So basically there's a lot more higher level comedy clubs for people to go to than you can find in Seattle. So as an audience member, you've got a lot more opportunity, and a lot bigger names are going to be here than they would be in Seattle. And then with Seattle, with COVID, they were shut down a lot longer than the Phoenix area was. And so a lot of their clubs didn't actually make it through that shutdown period, like a lot of businesses. And so, and they're still now, just a lot of them are not even reopened yet. They're still at 50% capacity up there. And so most of the clubs aren't even open. So that's a huge difference from the audience side there. And from the comic side, I mean, that also makes a big difference too. So in order to practice being a stand-up comedian, you have to find open mic time. So time that they let you get on stage. And there's a combination of in Seattle, the big clubs would have open mic night. And then a lot of the comedians will also run like bar open mic. So various venues that are willing to have us come in and tell jokes. There's those opportunities. One of the bigger differences is that in Phoenix, most of the clubs here are not having open mic night. And we've got a lot of opportunity to go tell jokes at bars for open mic. But it's much harder to get time on the big stages. And where that makes a big difference is that telling jokes in front of a real comedy audience. So if somebody is actually paid to come to a show, they're going to be laughing at different things than somebody who just happens to be in a bar and wants to just drink a beer. And they're like, oh, there's comedians here. Like, oh, that's not why I'm here. You're not going to really be able to tell for sure, like how well your jokes are doing if people don't care about hearing them. And then also at most of the, like a bar style open mic, then you're going to have mostly comedians that are there just waiting for their turn. And they've heard your jokes a few times, so they don't really care either. So it's easier to gauge jokes and get better if you can perform in front of, real audiences. And so that's another one of the differences between the two scenes. On the comedian side is that Seattle's an easier scene to get started in. But also one of the pros of here is that Phoenix, we're 5 hours away from Las Vegas, San Diego, and LA. And so there's a lot more opportunity, a lot more within that triangle area. There's so much more really big city opportunity than there is within Seattle area too. So lots of differences. Those are just some of the highlights off the top of my head.
So with your comedy, do you see that developing into something bigger, or do you just see it as a sideline?
It's so interesting, Kate. I struggle with that actually, right? Because with the two passions that I have, I'm like, I don't want to let go of either one of them. They're very important to me both. And, typically if you're going to be, a lot of people that are comedians, they'll have one of those goals, right? One passion. So somebody wants to be a stand-up comedian, they're going to put their all into it. They're going to quit their job. They're going to go drive Uber Eats during the day and go do stand-up comedy as much as they can and just work as hard as they can at it. And so I feel partially like that's going to handicap me as far as how fast I can go with comedy, just because I'm not giving up my day job, because that's very important to me. And so, does that limit me? Does that mean I should have different goals? I don't know exactly. Like, do I want to try to have a Netflix special? Do I want to tour around to various clubs? Do I want to get to that level? At this point, I don't know exactly what my end goal is. I don't really have a hard and fast, like, this is the one thing I want. I do know that I want to find how my day job and my night job, how they blend together. And I think that part of that is going to be the podcast, especially when we can do that live shows, because then it will be the merging of the comedy and the keto stuff together. So I don't know if that's what it looks like. I would really like to be able to go and do more speaking on a keto front, and I can bring the comedy into that as well. So that kind of is a rough vision, like a cloudy vision of what I see where that's going, is that it opening doors for me for being a speaker for various, nutrition and health conferences and things, and merging, the keto with the comedy together. So that's kind of where I more see things going, but I'm also open to whatever is in my universal path and plan.
Okay, well, I have a kind of off topic question.
Oh boy,
I've been asking all of my guests for a while. So what has surprised you most about life so far?
Oh, let's see. Yeah. No, really, it's got to be that darn car accident. Like I thought I had all figured out. Like going to Bastyr and getting the degrees that I did was like my life goal and vision. Like I knew for decades before I went there that like this is what I want to do. And I thought when I got to Bastyr and got all that figured out and got those degrees, it was like, okay, life's gravy now. I got everything figured out. I'm on the path. And that car accident was just really like, what the heck? Where did this come from? Why did this happen? And that was that. Now I can look back and go, okay, that was a horrible tragedy. And also that had to happen for me to learn about keto and to embrace it. Otherwise I'd be just like all those other nutritionists and doctors out there saying like, it's a fad, it's bad for you, it's never going to work, you know? And I'll say the second surprise then was like the breakup in the hospital by a text message. Okay. Like, I have a long history of making terrible dating choices. I'm divorced twice. Lots of my jokes are about this. I don't have a good track record for picking good men. And I really thought so after I found this keto niche and my business was booming, I was helping people. I finally had a stable income. And I met this guy. I thought like, okay, finally everything, the first half of my life, all that garbage, it's been worth it. You know, everything is going my way now. Finally, I get to enjoy how hard things have been in my life. And so that breakup by a text message in the hospital when I thought I'd finally found the good guy, you know, the one who was going to be everything I wanted. I was just like, wait a minute. I thought I'd already been through all the garbage in my life. So that was the second biggest surprise. But I can see now I probably would have never gotten started with comedy had I not gone through that. So really, those are the biggest surprises, really. So.
Yep, that's how it goes, really.
Yeah.
So we're getting close to the end of our time. If you could leave the listeners with one thought from today's show, what would you want that to be?
Oh boy. Well, I'm gonna go back to, you know, I before I was a comedian, I know I always wanted to be on stage and I wanted to be inspiring people. And I wanted to be some kind of motivational speaker. So for my undergrad at Bastyr, I got to speak at our graduation, which was at Benaroya Hall. For those of you Seattle people, it's a really big, famous hall that's there, which I think is about 3,000 seats or so. And my speech actually was on how that whenever you feel like life is really, really hard, I'm trying to paraphrase. It's been 12 years or more since I did the speech, but I'm trying to paraphrase the ideas. Basically, it's like whenever you feel like life is really, really hard and you're working and you're putting all the effort in and you've done everything right and nothing seems to be going your way, that be patient, because life, God, the universe, whatever you believe in has a plan for you. And it's just that the bridge isn't built yet. Okay. So I use the analogy of like, you feel like you're just walking in mud up to your waist and you're like, why is nothing working out? I'm working so hard. I'm so motivated. I'm doing all the right things, but everything feels like it's just slowing me down. And you slow down long enough and you realize you look over and there's a bridge that's being built over this mud pit that you've been trying to trudge through. And it's not done yet. And so you just have to be patient in those times and know that whatever you're going through, whether it's just because you need to slow down and wait for this other stuff to catch up to where you are, or just it's just not the right time yet, stop trying to walk through the mud, take a breath back. And like you said at the beginning, of just take a breath, release the stress. And when the bridge is finished, it's going to be an easy path. It's going to be so easy to walk over that mud bog that you've been trying to go through. So try to embrace those times in life that you don't know why things are hard. I've had many of them myself, and I can see on the other side that it was like, oh, I had to go through that car accident in order to find keto and change all these other people's lives. And, you know, I had to get that terrible breakup. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to go and entertain people and make them laugh and bring joy to myself at night as well. So have patience. Wait for the bridge to be built when things are hard.
Okay, we've had a couple people make comments, just one saying just hi, and then somebody saying 3,000 people, fantastic, Carole. And then somebody who obviously missed the very beginning, and they're asking what helped you get past all the difficulty and be successful. And because we can't do the show over, I'm just going to suggest that they listen to the rebroadcast. And then somebody commenting on the trekking through the mud bog. So thank you all for commenting. I'm going to ask Carole to tell us how people can contact her if they're interested in more info about, well, anything really that we've talked about her keto programs, about her comedy. How can people connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on all your favorite social medias, and so if you're Instagram person or Facebook, you can find me Keto Carole. Just remember that Carole is the very fancy French spelling. It has an E on the end. Keto Carole, Keto, Carole with an E on the end. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. If you search on YouTube, you can find our broadcast of our podcast, which is Keto Chat Live. And also, if you're just more interested in seeing some before photos of me too, because I didn't mention that, but I lost over 60 pounds in my initial keto journey. Just for fun, go look at those photos. You can see those on my website, which is ketocarole.com. And also, if you're interested in just some more information about, if you feel like you're curious about working with me or anything like that, ketocarole.com as well. You can see the application there. As well as I've got a free 7-day fast and easy meal plan that you're welcome to go download. That's on my website as well too.
Great. So if you forget any of that, you can go to the radio website, which is soulfireradio.com. Click on guests, scroll down to Carole's name, and I believe the website is listed there, so that can put you in contact with the other information. So thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure, Kate. Thank you so much for having me.
I think I'm going to have to come up to Phoenix and see one of your shows. So
that would be very cool.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank the audience too for listening today. And we have another great show planned for next week. This is actually my last live show. The shows in July are pre-records, but they're all great shows too. So be sure to tune in. They'll be posting at 3 p.m. Next week's show is, my guest is Lara Valletta Vesta. And the show is exploring the divine feminine. And this show is going to get a little bit into that woo-woo side of things. That's a little bit magical. Lara is an expert on runes and mystical folklore, but she has used that for her own healing, and she believes that it can be a great healing path for others. So be sure to tune in next week for that show. And thanks again, Carole.
Thanks for having me, Kate.
I'm just going to say bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Soul Fire Wisdom with Kate Olson. We hope you enjoyed the show. If we made you laugh, brightened your day, or sparked a new thought, we have succeeded in our mission. Join us next time when we'll share more secrets and truths and all the magic of transformation that is the journey to Soul Fire Wisdom. Always remember, be fierce in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire.